We're going to tickle your brain on today's podcast. Yep, that's right. We are talking about doing things totally different from the traditional way we do things in a body shop. And we're talking with somebody that I thought would be perfect for you because he has a wildly successful shop. He went from like a 2-man little garage to this gorgeous now shop and is running so efficiently. He gets paid from insurance companies. He has amazing relationship with his customers and an amazing solid team. I mean, the guy's doing just gnarly stuff. And I wanted him to come share with you so that you could potentially roll some of this out in your shop. And if nothing else, just give you some really good stuff to chew on for your brain, the brain food. Yeah. I'm Italian now or something.
Welcome to Body Bangin', your podcast for all things body. Auto body, that is. And now, introducing Body Bangin's host, Mickey Woods of Mickey Woods Marketing. Mickey is a former auto collision center owner and is now a marketing and business development expert to shops across the globe.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Body Bangin' Podcast. Today, we're going to make some waves. I hope you all are ready. I've got Clay Hoberecht on from Wichita, Kansas. Hi, Clay.
Hey, what's going on, Mickey? How are you doing?
I am good, and I am excited to talk to you today. Clay actually owns a shop called Best Body Shop, and I'm sure he thinks he is the best, or maybe he just knows it. In Wichita, Clay actually does some amazing social media things. Obviously, as a shop owner, he's trying to do the best with what he's got. And Clay is a disruptor in our industry, and I'm pumped about it. So we're going to talk about some different things that Clay's doing in his shop that you may want to, if not even apply to your shop. Hey, it's your business. You do what you want. But open your mind to think of other possibilities out there. Right, Clay?
Oh, for sure. I've been called a lot of things. A disruptor would be one of them. It's probably one of the nicer things that have been said. But yeah, it's there's a mentality that there is no box. So let's get out of the box and find solutions. That's essentially what's landed us where we're at now.
Right. Well, and Clay has owned his shop for 9 years and has been in the industry for about 20 years. So he's no stranger to the way things have always been done. So, Clay, let me ask you, because I know you are a client of Barrett Smith's, and Barrett Smith has been on the podcast. What was it that led you to saying, there's got to be something better? I have to do something different. Was there like one thing?
I have not met a body shop owner that hasn't asked that. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just a series, and I'm sure that you've, in doing what you do in marketing, and you as actually being an owner of a body shop yourself.
Yeah.
There's so many challenges in our industry. And I think that every single day you wake up trying to figure out, is there a better way, and what can we do? And I think that's also lends to why we see a lot of body shops becoming, so efficient, and they do the successes and they do everything they can to fit this round peg in a square hole. That is what ultimately becomes ultra frustrating. And the reason why I see a lot of people selling their body shops and getting out of the industry. I mean, I just recently met with a technician that he was just amped to get out of the industry because of how upside down and inside out it is. And for me, I'm super tenacious. I actually come from the hot rod world where I got into the industry over 20 years building hot rods and working for hot rod shops.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I got into the collision repair business that I started to see how absolutely insane this industry is. I remember doing, working on the first couple, set of collision repair, and that involves an insurance company, and having no idea about the ins and outs. And then once I started getting educated about it and the tools and equipment and the training that it takes, and how impossible it is to do a safe and proper repair based on the outline of what most body shops operate within. That's where I met Barrett. So I was just so frustrated. I was ready to throw in the towel and quit.
Yeah, I remember you said that one of our conversations, that it took you to getting almost to the end of yourself to go, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Yeah. If anybody knows me well, I am borderline compulsive. I mean, when I get fixated on something, nothing else exists, and I don't quit anything. And this industry almost beat me to that point. Where I just didn't want to be in it anymore. Every day was a hassle. And I mean, you're working at one point, I remember having, 11, 12 employees and working 20-hour days, 7 days a week, and everyone's working. And I remember this is first couple of years starting the shop. I remember at the end of work, doing this grind time, looking at my bank account and seeing nothing in it, going, wait a minute. How is that possible?
Right.
I've got cars stacked up around the corner. I'm booked out. I've got cars coming everywhere. How am I broke?
Right.
And I'll never forget. I saw a video by a guy named Grant Cardone about social media. Yeah. And he inspired me about 8 years ago, to start doing social media for my business. I absolutely hated social media, but I knew it was what was best for my business. And I started doing it. We actually got a pretty large following because there's very few people in the collision repair business that really expose every aspect of the collision repair business.
Yeah.
And I was really transparent and vulnerable and show my mistakes and work the mistakes. And we built a pretty big audience. Well, when I started getting frustrated with the industry, I utilized that audience to express those frustrations. And I thought I was helping my customer, just exposing things.
Right.
Well, and State Farm did this, and I just had all these frustrations. And Barrett called me one day, and I'll never forget. He said, "Hey man, you're an idiot." and I said, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "Why aren't you answering my emails?" And I thought they were spam. I'm like, who are you? And he goes, well, I'm Barrett Smith at Auto Damage Experts. He goes, you it with a great heart for the consumer. And if you were educated, you could actually be effective for your clients. Oh, so your company could train me or teach me how to do this? And he goes, absolutely. I said, okay, so how do I do that? And at that point, like I said, I was so frustrated. I was ready to get out, and I was hungry for anything I could get a hold of. And he said, well, you can't just hire me because I only hire people that repair cars correctly. I said, oh, okay. And I thought I checked those boxes.
Right.
Well, he started asking me about the tools and equipment that I had and the training. And by the end of his questionnaire asking me about all these tools, found out that I didn't pass. And because you're part of the problem too. You're not repairing cars correctly either. And I'm like, well, this phone call was real awesome. Okay, as long as you promise me that you'll continue helping becoming an advocate for the consumer and getting the tools and equipment, I'll help you through this process. And I did. And I think it was about a year later, he asked me the same questions about the tools and equipment, spot resistance welder. Do you have and later on partnering with Spineezy and a couple different companies, I was able to get the tools and equipment. And that's when Barrett, the magic words, okay, now you can start paying me. Yeah. So Barrett opened my eyes to a whole new world that I didn't know existed in the collision repair business that I was desperately seeking. And that was that you can be successful in repairing cars correctly. You just have to shed the mentality that is inherited in the collision repair business and almost like become normal business in our world.
Right. Yeah. I love what you just said there. That it's information. It's a perspective that we've inherited, just doing things the way we've done for so long. And that's really what I want everybody listening to kind of perk up your ears, is we just have a certain way of looking at doing business because that's the way we've always done it. And then when you have something like this that kind of sheds some light into a dark room that you thought everything was good in, like you said, when Barrett asked you those questions, oh shit, we don't know what we don't know. And this is going to be one of those conversations of, I think you're going to become aware of some things throughout this podcast, of some things that like, oh, never even thought about that. Or I thought about it, but it could never work. But yet here's this guy and he's doing it and it's working.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of work. It's a tremendous amount of work. After hiring Barrett, I think that I do what most body shop owners do when they call. I get a decent amount of phone calls myself through social media asking how to do something. It's almost like everyone's wanting this magic pill, this
quick fix.
Yeah, this quick fix. And I was no different. Right away I'm like, okay, Barrett, what button do I have to push, or what sequence of things? And he just quickly trained me. So it's not an overnight deal. You have to learn how to manage a customer's expectation. You have to know how to repair cars correctly. How you're going to have to know what the laws are around repairing cars, and you're going to have to help as a consumer advocate when your customers are being pursued or taken advantage of by insurance companies. And yet you're also going to have to learn where the line is, that you're just a humble service provider. You're not their attorney. You're not their lawyer. You run. And something that Barrett has always told me is, you got to take care of mother business, because mother business can't take care of herself. And too many times in my past, and too many times I've seen other body shop owners almost sacrifice their own business to try to help their consumers. And what really ends up happening is you're not helping anybody. People, both the business and the consumer end up losing out, and it's a terrible deal. So it was a lot of work. Today I just got a phone call from another body shop owner that's just hiring Barrett, and it's like, stuff takes time. It takes a lot of hard. You got to put your head down and go after it. I spent one of the things that I did is, for an entire year I studied comedians and pastors.
Really?
You to have good customer service as an independent body shop that has an insurance company that's consistently combating you or combating what you're saying. You have to gain the trust of your customers, but you have to be able to communicate to them and know and read when they're engaged and when they're not. And I loved watching good comedians know and study a room and be able to engage for an entire hour or 2 hours. Same thing with a good pastor. A good pastor. I don't know. And again, like, you have to learn everybody's personality type and how to communicate to that. When I talk about, let's say a 65-year-old lady with a Honda Civic, I'm probably going to have to talk to her a little bit different than the 18-year-old with the Ford Mustang.
Yes.
And I think that's something that a lot of body shop owners miss out on, including myself. I just thought, well, as long as I know how to repair cars and I've got the contract signed and I've got my, cover my ass paperwork taken care of, I should be good. And then I complain when it goes south. Well, you got to learn the same thing that the insurance companies are learning. They learn how to communicate and how to sell and persuade to a customer. The only difference, though, is that we have the truth on our side. So we literally easier on our side. We just have to learn how to communicate correctly.
Right. Now, when we're talking about different shops out there that feel like, because right now, as you know, most all shops are so busy, they're booking out. And so it's not the way it was before, where we're dying for cars to come in the drive. And, people were ringing my phone off the hook. Now, not so many calls because they're so slammed, right? But they think because they're busy that they're profitable. It kind of goes back to what you're saying before. Busy, busy, busy. Cars lined up down the street, but I got nothing in the bank. Or you have some decent money in the bank, but does that actually making you profitable? And and again, to what you said. So a car's coming in, because I don't want to burden the customer, the guest, I'm just going to eat it because the insurance company is not going to pay me on it. So that's just, you can do it, but how long can you do it for, kind of thing. So
yeah, well, most body shop owners, in my experience, are not business people.
Right.
just aren't.
Right.
Are they are they they just don't know the ins and outs of business and how to run it. I actually at one point had an employee that almost quit. This
Mhm.
is this is my third year in. I had a technician that just had this old school mentality, and our average RO at the time I think was like $5,000 or $6,000, and we had a bunch of big hits, and we were
Mhm.
scheduling cars out, and I remember he almost quit because he didn't have enough cars outside waiting.
Ah.
Well, man, you got 3 cars inside that are $10,000 a piece.
Mhm.
I said, and the profit on them are higher. You
Right.
know, we might not be doing 20 at $500, but we're
Right.
doing it. And it was almost like I was speaking a different language.
Yes.
Um, couldn't compute, and I do that far too often. I mean,
Mhm.
you have cars lined up around the block, and yet if you don't know that selling a hot dog for $1 while buying it at $2 is not going to end well. I don't care how many thousands of hot dogs you sell. And
Right.
again, that goes back to what we see with the square peg and the round hole. I see too many times you try to become more efficient and you try to get better discounts on parts and better
Mm.
discounts on materials than just facing and just facing the reality that you need to charge more. And not only do you
Mm.
need to charge more, when you're not charging more, you're stressing the system, you're stressing your tools, equipment, you're stressing your
Mhm.
technician, your entire system process, and ultimately your customers feel it. And the
Mhm.
reality, just charge what it takes to repair a car. You know,
Mhm.
when I hear people talking and bitching and moaning about labor rates, and they're like, I'm just like, well, just charge what you need to charge then. You're the business owner.
Right.
Who else could make that decision other than? But the
Yeah, but they
reality is,
don't know.
but I was just about to say,
Yeah.
the reality is most people don't even know what they should be charging, or
Correct.
what, or more importantly, what it costs to operate your
That's
business.
right.
You
Right.
know, so it's almost like this rigmarole of getting in line and just following what everyone else is doing.
Mhm.
Okay, is everyone complaining about this? Okay, I'll complain about this. Dude, know your business. Oh,
Yeah. Well, even those that don't know their business, we know enough to know that if you write up your estimate, or as you probably call it, an invoice, when you write that up and the insurance company comes back and says they're going to cut it and they're not going to pay for you to do X, Y, and Z. Well, guess what? You don't need to be a business major in college to know you're losing your ass.
yeah.
Just
Well,
as they know, and they're frustrated with it.
I just had a vendor come in today. He meant well. Okay. Um, he came in and he thought that he was helpful, and he says, "Hey, guess what, Clay?" And I said, "What?" He goes, one of the shops here in town are charging for boost cycles to turn their bake cycle on. Like, you could charge for that." I said, "I can charge for anything I want as long as it's reasonable. I mean, if it's reasonable, it's
Right.
my business." He goes, "Well, they're charging for it. They're not getting paid all the time for it, but they're charging for it." And I said, "That sounds ridiculous." And he goes, "What?" And I said, "So let me tell you what I hear.
Mm.
You're overcharging because you can afford to not charge for it, but if you
Mhm.
paid for it, awesome. That'd be like going to Walmart, loading your grocery basket up, going in, and then Walmart saying, 'Okay, you don't have to pay for Snickers.' And then the next person that comes in, if they pay for it, like, 'Oh man, we got it.' It's like, wait, are you guys
Right.
making that much money that you can pick and choose what you charge for and what you don't?"
Right.
So you put an invoice together. It's an invoice.
Mhm.
It's a bill.
Right.
Go into any business and they hand you an invoice. That's what it costs to do the business with that. So
Right.
I, I never really understood that part of our industry is like, charge whatever you possibly can get, and whatever you don't
Mhm.
get, that's okay. Move on. We'll get it
Mhm.
later. Well, if you need it and you need to run your business, then
Mhm.
for it, you know.
Right. Well, it becomes almost like a game. Like, I see a lot of shops. I have friends that are in the insurance industry, and I hear their complaints about the body shops. And then I obviously work with body shops and former shop owner. So I know the complaints on this side. And it's incredible, though, what shops will do to try to bamboozle the insurance, because rather than just doing the right thing, then they're overcharging and they're coming up with craziness. They're charging for things that they're not even doing on the vehicle. So now all of a sudden it becomes an even more contentious relationship. Like you're saying, oh, well, now you can charge for that. Well, did you do it? The question even wasn't even like, well, whatever process it is, did you do it? Because maybe if you do it, then you should charge for it. So it becomes really, I feel like, an ethical based issue,
yeah. Without a shadow of a doubt, the state of the industry is where it's at because of body shops. Like I know that everyone wants to point at the insurance company and wants to point at, whatever. But the reality is this whole thing wouldn't be where we're at if we were ethical, moral business owners, our business just ran a business correctly. I see the exact same thing in my own town. In fact, we recently did a post-repair inspection on a vehicle that replaced a catalytic converter. And I think the catalytic converter was like $2,700. And the whole bill ultimately was like $3,500. Well, on the post-repair inspection, we found out that they just cut the cat and welded a $100 cat from eBay onto it, but charged OE catalytic converter and left the O2 sensors just hanging. I mean, it was an atrocious, disgusting display repair that ultimately, I think it was like $6,000 to repair, this simple repair that the insurance actually paid for. They paid for the OE cat. They paid for everything to be done correctly.
Right.
They took it upon themselves to cut the cat and put a $100 cat in.
Wow.
And you have to sit there and like, do you really blame the insurance company for wondering if you're taking advantage of them?
Right.
Well, yeah, I get it to a certain extent,
Right. Yeah. And I appreciate the sentiment that it is frustrating. Every shop I talk to almost daily is frustrated, and they feel just like you were feeling. Like something's got to give here, right? But at the same time, I'm not much to feel like a victim. I just don't vibe with that. I have control over myself, and I can take responsibility for myself. And if I don't like something, I can do something about it. And I feel like that's kind of what you're saying. Like, let's take some responsibility for what's going on and do different.
Yeah, ultimately that's what I did. When I hired on Barrett, he gave me some information. But one of the things that I learned from Barrett is, number one, he said, "Well, everything I'm about to teach you, you're going to later on understand that it's extremely simple, and you're going to ask yourself, man, why did I have to hire him to teach me something that was so simple?" And number two, one of the things I learned about Barrett is he didn't do the work for me. So like at first, I wanted to know about the Kansas state laws. And so I said, "Hey, Barrett, I'm really busy. I'm writing repair plans. I've got this going on. Can you find these laws for me?" And he goes, "No, dude, it's your business, not mine."
Right.
I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh, okay." And he goes, "I can tell you where you could look and some things that I've he says, there's this thing called the Unfair Claims Settlement Act that maybe Kansas has. You should look that up, and you should hear some words and find an attorney, maybe a judge." And he pointed me towards the right direction, but I did the legwork. Right. And ultimately, what you're supposed to do as a body shop or as a business owner, period, is to get to know it and put in the work yourself. But yeah, I mean, it was without a shadow of a doubt the hard work of learning. Like I joined Cardone University and learned how to sell Cardone, and I Bradley and Ed Milet and George Belfort, and learned all these things, mirroring and linguistics and all this. Because ultimately it was like, nobody's going to change this except for me,
Right.
And I've had, and this from our industry, I've had a countless of body shop owners or technicians that want to do certain things because of the industry and who's around. And I'm like, hey, I hate to break it to you, but those people aren't going to be standing in a courtroom next to you when things go south.
That's right.
And ask me how I know, because I've been there. I've been in companies. I've helped clients, as an expert witness in lawsuits and litigations, and I've helped lawyers and judges. In fact, we recently had a judge come in, and he walked in and he goes, who's Clay? And I said, me. And he goes, man, I don't know who the hell you are. He goes, but this attorney here in town told me to go to you. And he goes, he's a hell of an attorney. He told me to get advice from you on how to handle this claim. He goes, you must know something. And I'm like, oh, I don't know the law, but I know one particular part of the law, and I can help you what I've learned. And and so I was able to help him through the process through the claim. And ultimately on that particular one, the insurance company actually had to go through litigation against a judge. They set course and paid out and took care of everything. But it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, you're doing so many different we could probably take like hours and hours to go through all the different things that you're doing there. So I guess the question that probably everybody is wanting to know is, if you were to change, so for any shop out there that's doing it the way that you used to do it, if you're going to change one thing, if they could make one step to do something different, what would that be?
That's a really good question. Obviously, I think Barrett would want me to tell him to hire auto damage experts.
Right.
Oh, this is going to sound really boring, and I wish I had like some shocking thing to say, but get to know your damn business. I've told people that it's very simple. The thing to own a body shop, you need to, number one, know how to repair a car, and that I would say it would eliminate a lot of the industry. And I that sounds rude, but that's the reality. Number two, you need to learn how to bill for that. You need to learn how to charge for that. That takes more than just being a technician that repairs a car. You got to know what things cost in the business and how to keep things rolling. And number three, you need to learn how to do that legally. You need to learn how to do first two legally. Number four, you need to learn how to sell and persuade and communicate to customers. And the thing is, you need to learn the legalities of the claims process. Now, the fifth thing is what you're going to give away to your clients for free. That's not what your business is. As Barrett says, you're a humble service provider. I'm just a body shop.
Right.
However, body shop that's extraordinarily educated in the claims process and have a decent amount of experience in the claims process, and I can help you for free as a free consultant, if you say, or all my collision advisors and everybody in the shop is trained that they can schedule consultations with me. But we make it very clear that that's not our job. That's the free item.
Right.
The first four things is what our job is, and we know those things like the back of our hand because we have to be able to have a successful business.
So when it comes to repairing vehicles correctly, you thought you were, and it took somebody else's checklist to know you weren't. So I think there's a lot of people listening like, well, done. I'm already doing that. Like, I already fixed cars correctly. What is a good way for them to kind of have some type of mirror moment to be able to look at themselves and actually take a look? Because I think we're often blinded in our own things, life in general, right? Like we've got blind spots, and this could potentially be a big blind spot. It's funny. I had a client call me for marketing the other day, and we were talking about, he was hiring some new people, and he goes, well, we're having a little bit of an issue because so-and-so thinks we should fix the car this way, and so-and-so thinks we should fix it this way. I think we should fix it this way. And I said, well, if I can make a suggestion, I recommend you pull up the OE procedures for that vehicle, and then it takes everybody's opinion out of it.
100%. No, that's exactly. I mean, it couldn't be easier to repair cars today than ever. There's a detailed. I mean, literally, it's a numbered and sequenced instruction on how to repair a car. The repair procedures tell you what welder is required, what welding gas, what welding wire, what can be repaired, what can't be repaired, what calibrate. I mean, it breaks it down to where all you have to do is follow the instructions.
Right.
It's not rocket science. In fact, we used to, and this is scary, the state of the industry that we're in. We put together repair procedure classes Actually, Walt, that's how I met Walt.
Oh, okay.
Walt actually came to our first repair procedure class after me verbally beating him up over the phone. He drove 11 hours to our shop.
Wow.
This guy's committed. I don't know who this guy is, but
Yeah. And those of you guys that are listening, Walt was on a previous podcast who also is a client of Barrett. And he gets into more specifics on how to repair a vehicle and get paid for it by insurance, which Clay also does. But anyway, so go for it. Okay, continue.
So during this repair procedure class, Blake Baker, that was the guy that was putting on the class. I gave him my credit card and had him. He asked the audience, what cars are at your shop right now. So people are raising their hand. I've got a Ford Focus. I'm doing a rear body panel. So he got on Ford's website, put my credit card in, pulled the VIN up, and literally went through the instructions on how to replace that rear body panel, and then started asking, are you following these? And everybody, without a shadow of a doubt, everybody in the room was like, no, we're not following procedures whatsoever. At that point, Blake looked over and he goes, I'm missing something here. I'm not seeing where your opinion is asked at all. You either follow the procedures or you don't.
Right.
Very clear in the repair procedures, very clear of what's at risk when you don't follow those procedures. And that's it's an unsafe and improper repaired car that could ultimately hurt your customer in a subsequent accident. That's pretty big stakes,
Huge. Yeah.
So nowadays, I talked to Barrett the other day, and Barrett's like, man, at least you guys have procedures. Back in the day, we kind of had to just fight with our, what we thought was right. And there was little things here and there. And he goes, but there wasn't an outline like there is now. Now there's no excuse at all.
Right. Well, that's why I guess I thought it was so funny when he brought up this whole opinions thing. I was like, opinions? It really doesn't matter what you think about it. I think the government should be run a certain way, but guess what? It's not the way that it is.
100%.
I'm going to interrupt this podcast for just one quick second, because a lot of people wonder, Mickey, what is it that you even do besides host a podcast? Well, I do marketing, and really the biggest thing that I do is help you drive more traffic to your business. And not even just more traffic, but consistent traffic to your business. As a former shop owner, I know how important that is. So if that's something you're interested in, or you just want to talk about marketing or developing your business in general, feel free to reach out. You can visit collisioncentermarketing.com. There's a calendar on there, and you can just book a time that works for you, and we'll set up a phone call. Or you can email or call me, and my notes are down in the description of this episode. But I hope to hear from you. I'd love to help you build your business. But in the meantime, you better get back to this podcast because it's really good. All right. This is all like such good stuff. So quick question for you.
Okay.
If you were to say, of all the shops around you, a potential guest gets into an accident, customer gets into an accident, what separates Best Body Shop from all the other shops around you?
Well, I mean, I think the things that we just talked about, we repair cars based on the manufacturer's 100%. We play around with it. And I don't know very many people in the industry that actually do that, period, let alone in my own town or in my own city.
Right.
We are consumer advocates. We are not, without a shadow of a doubt, just like Walt, we work for the consumer, not the insurance company. And I know that's kind of a hot topic in the collision repair. It seems like everybody says that nowadays, but we actually mean it. When we don't negotiate on behalf of the client, we're committed to a full, transparent repair process. So the consumer is going to have every aspect of everything that involves that repair. That means that the photos of the disassembly process and the check-in process, and they're going to have repair procedures that they're going to see themselves, and they're going to see pre-scans, and they're going to see, pre-measurements. And we're actually going to go and speak to them about the repair, and then to their insurance on their behalf, only if they would like us to. Like I said, ultimately, we talk about, I think most people in the collision repair business are really interested in how to get paid, but I don't think there's very people that are interested in how to repair a car correctly and how to help a customer the best way. And what we found is when you become an expert in those two items, the bills just seem to magically get paid. We had one today that State Farm paid $1,500 over our bill. It's kind of like I told Barrett about it, and Barrett's like, "Oh, that doesn't sound good. Buckle up for a long," like
right.
But ultimately, like, we just don't see. I thought that when you start to become a consumer advocate and you're going down the road that we're going down, that we'd see a lot more contentious and a lot more fights.
Right.
And the reality is when you're educated and you're educated to your consumer, the insurance really doesn't have anything to fight. There's almost, like last conversation I had with an insurance adjuster that was contentious about a repair. I'm respectful. I have fun with on the phone with them. It's not respectful, but at the end of the day, I simply just said, hey, number one, I never asked your opinion or your advice on the repair. Right. And number two, I'm not the author of the repair. I'm just the reader. I'm just following the that are laid, ahead of us. So at the end of the day, if you have a problem, you have a problem with the manufacturer, not with us.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Ultimately, that's the deal. We have a customer in right now that, that the insurance company wanted to utilize aftermarket junkyard parts, and they wanted to cut corners, and they didn't want to do the post-collision inspections and the calibrations, and they really wanted a cheap repair. And we educated the consumer early on, before the insurance was even involved. We communicated like they were actually our customer, like, hey, this is how we're car. This is what Subaru says about the repair of your vehicle. And it was because of that communication that the insurance company was unsuccessful in their attempt, and they paid for the entire repair. I didn't have to have any phone calls or any emails. In fact, the customer had just a couple emails back and forth and called us to ask for some advice here and there. And they bill. Now, the sad part is how many body shops would have never done that?
Yeah.
And would have just repaired the car the way that the insurance company wanted them to. And they would, according to the manufacturer, they'd leave with an unsafe vehicle.
Right.
That's simple.
Well, and you are, when I asked you all the things that you're doing that differentiate you, I guess the follow-up question is, how much are you sharing that with your customers when they come in? Because I think a lot of shops do different. I think it's about differentiating ourselves in business. It's the key. What separates you, right? If we're all doing the same thing, what makes you so special? But then secondarily, and I guess this is my marketing hat, but who are you telling that you are special and why you are special? So is that something that you're communicating with every customer that comes in?
Yeah, we
not like, hey, we're so great. Did you know? By the way.
Yeah, I think early on we were, but with confidence and success, you don't really need to as much. One of the things that I train my collision advisor and anybody that works here is that we don't talk about the insurance company right off the bat, because customers are not coming to us to argue about insurance companies.
Right.
Early on, the minute you would come in my shop, I'd be like, hey, what kind of insurance do you have? Oh, this is what they're doing. And oh my God, they're so terrible. And I read a book about this, and I was in a lawsuit about this. And ultimately they want their car repaired. So we first make sure that they're comfortable and confident with the repair process. Now that becomes pretty simple when you have a shop like ours that every aspect of it displays that level of confidence in the repair. Our shop is flawless. We have an awesome set of tools and equipment. The technicians are well compensated, and they're respectful. And so when you walk through the shop, they'll come up and shake your hand, and they're educated. And you can tell that this isn't, your uncle's garage that most body shops are thought of being.
Right.
And so, ultimately, before they leave, we make sure it's very clear that, by the time we've established a base of trust and we've kind of become, friends, we simply ask, like, hey, by the way, what insurance is it that you're using? And they're like, oh, it's American Family. Like, oh yeah, this is our experience with American Family. This is what we've seen. And ultimately it's just kind of like a friend giving friendly advice.
Right.
And it tends to not become this conspiracy theorist, Which I don't know how many body shops that I've talked to that's the first thing they do is like, we're consumer advocates. And it's like, they don't really want that shoved down their throat.
Right.
Right as soon as they get out of the car.
Right.
Want their car fixed. Can you actually do that? And again, it follows the 5 things that I said, repair a car correctly, know that you're doing it right and legally. And at the very end, be more educated and more of an expert than anybody, including the insurance company, on consumer rights, so that when that customer, and I'll tell you a little dirty little secret, the insurance company is extraordinarily smart in the fact that they know that if they can become the first contact and they can become trusted, then that's who your consumer is going to go to for advice.
Yes, true.
And guess what advice an insurance company is going to give a consumer?
Right.
Self-serving advice.
Right.
And so if you can become that, then you have an opportunity to help that customer through the process and get what they deserve. But you're not going to be able to get that by jumping right off the bat and saying, "Oh, State Farm is terrible." No, you got to earn their trust and know that you can repair it, and let them know that you can repair their car correctly, and that's your focus.
Well, because then it becomes like a kid getting stuck between mommy and daddy, and nobody wants that. It's like, oh God, like I need more drama in my life. Seriously,
we make it ultra clear who's in the middle, and that would be us. I just had a customer. It's funny. Right before this podcast, I actually got a call from a customer that said that Esurance told my customer that they haven't settled his claim for the last week, because he sent an email saying, "Hey, what's going on? I'm ready to get settled." And they said that they haven't settled it because no adjusters want to go out to Best Body Shop's place, because the last time that they did, they almost got into a fist fight with me. And I said, "Wow, well, that's news to me." I've in 20 some years of being in the collision repair business, I've never been in a fist fight, let alone almost getting into one.
Right.
Let alone with an insurance adjuster in my own shop. That's insane.
Yeah.
And furthermore, I don't think Esurance even has ever sent an adjuster out to our shop at all anyways.
Oh, how funny.
That's wild. But the whole point is ultimately I was able to just kind of communicate to my customers, say, "Hey, listen, we're available." I would send that. I'd put that in an email. I'll respond. We're ready to rock and roll.
Right.
And ultimately, I think that vehicle is probably going to have to be moved to storage until that behavior changes on the insurance side, until they settle their claim up.
Right. Oh boy. Well, they make it so fun. It's just so fun. You never know what each day is going to bring, Clay.
Well, the beautiful side of it is, as long as you're on the side of the truth, you can relax. I mean, this customer, there's no way, shape, or form this customer is going to believe that crazy lie. And why? Because I've established a base of trust and I got to know the guy.
Right.
And it wasn't because he got to know that I'm there to fight for him. No, he got to know that I care about him. I care about his family. I care about an accident that they potentially could have in the Tahoe that we're repairing.
Right.
And that's heavy on my shoulders, and that he met the team that is going to repair the shop. And he saw how respectful and clean and organized we were. So when some outlandish, crazy things that the insurance says comes up, he's able to go, "Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Something doesn't seem right."
Yeah.
And on that particular deal, I'm going to gently and simply, show the client what deceptive and unfair trade practicing is, because and I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think it's legal for an insurance company to lie in order to financially benefit themselves.
Yeah, that's pretty tacky.
That for me personally, I'm going to be pursuing them on a different thing after the repair is done.
Right.
Say that stuff about my business, but ultimately my number one goal is to help that customer make sure that stuff stops.
Yeah. So now you had mentioned taking the customer through your shop or meeting the team. Is that something that you do with every job? Talk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, almost every single job we have so we don't write estimates, and we haven't written estimates in probably 5-6 years. We give free consultations.
Mm.
We'll give a rough ballpark verbally if you absolutely need it. Some people just
Right.
have numbers, but ultimately, just like a doctor is going to gain your trust first and then start going through the process.
Right.
With vehicles these days, it's not as easy as writing an estimate, from the parking lot. If you brought me an 1985 Impala, I could probably write a pretty damn accurate estimate from the parking lot. Bring a 2020 Camry, and it becomes almost impossible because there's so many different substrates and post-collision inspections and calibrations and different materials that are, seam sealers and welders, and everything is so complex. So we walk them through the process. We almost every single customer goes through a tour of the shop. Again, part of the reason why we studied, pastors and comedians is we become sensitive to what they need. If I'm not going to walk a customer through a 20-minute consultation, if at 5 minutes I start to see his eyes glass over,
right.
But I'm also going to learn to communicate to that person in what's best for that person.
Right.
And so we had one guy actually drive all the way from Texas to Kansas. His truck's actually in our shop right now.
Wow.
He's watched our Facebook forever, and he told him and his wife that if he ever gets in a wreck, this is the place he's going to go. And wife came in and was like, I don't know what's so special about you guys, And so that on that particular one, I spent an hour with him walking around, showing him the shop and showing him the welders and all this stuff. And by the end, his wife was like, man, this is insane. She goes, I think she was HR in a business. And she goes, I've been in a lot of businesses and been around a lot of businesses. This is incredible. I see what my husband sees now,
Nice.
But then you have the business guy that it has an hour lunch break and he just needs to know what the process is. And we might be able to squeeze out a 15-minute consultation with him real quick.
Right.
Ultimately, what we want to, before we schedule that person in for the repairs, we want to make sure they're comfortable and confident in the repairs that we're doing. They're fully and well aware of the things that could happen, or we don't want them to run in blind.
Right.
So we make sure that that's all a part of that conversation about that in that consultation.
Yeah.
Also, it's also us choosing the customers as well. I mean, we don't take in all customers. There's some customers that refer to our competitor that, as Barrett would say, it's probably better for your competitor. That job probably for your competitor. And so sometimes we do that, but it's very much a relationship. Ultimately, we better get that relationship right at the beginning, because when it becomes contentious, that's not the time you want to work on that relationship.
No. And I actually have talked with there are now more shops doing things similarly to what you're doing and Barrett's clients are doing out there. And all of them that I talk to, everyone, you'll probably agree, says this isn't for everybody. Not every customer is going to appreciate this or want to move forward with this. And that's okay. There are plenty of other shops that they can go to. But for the right person, I'm the right shop.
Yeah. And that becomes super, super apparent usually in that consultation.
Right.
One of the first things that we do right off the bat is you're gonna shake my hand and I'm gonna introduce myself and look at each other in the eyes. Repair business has rightfully earned a black eye. And I'm not gonna blame consumers for thinking that body shops are sometimes mischievous and untrustworthy, because that's just the truth of our industry. But I am going to show that we're not like that. Right. And when you have a customer that's slumped in the seat and kind of waving his fingers like, yeah, I need an estimate. Just it's out, it's out back. I walk over and go, hi, I'm Clay. What's your name? How'd you hear about us? What kind of help with? And I ultimately, by the time we get to the car, there's some times that I've already made the decision before we even get to the car to like, no, this guy is, this girl's not going to make it. Not going to make it.
Same with my marketing clients, Clay. Same with my. There are some calls where I'm like, nope, within 3 minutes. This is not a match.
I'm sitting there playing in my head, like, man, the minute Geico calls this person, this is not going to be good.
Right?
It's going to be a nightmare. And again, like the sad truth in our industry, as long as you're an independent that's not in contract with an insurance company, you're almost. And maybe you're almost an enemy of the insurance company. It's a competitor.
Right.
Their own body shops. And so consistently, one of the things that I can admire about insurance companies is they're relentlessly and consistently trying to persuade the consumer against us and into their own shops.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could have 100 ROs in a row. You could have 100 cars in a row that have absolutely no problem. That doesn't mean that they're not going to try to create a problem. And the minute that you let that one customer in that really shouldn't be in, that's usually the problem becomes a real big mess. And that can turn into a landslide of customers after that.
Right. Well, and I understand it. Like you made a really good point. I understand it from the insurance company's perspective. As a business, they want to keep their costs down and they have contract with shops to do just that. And they're more concerned about the bottom line, where you as a shop, as you know, you've been into court, I don't know how many times, but when you're a shop owner, you know that it lands on you. If the repair is incorrect, something goes wrong, that's on you. You are going to be held accountable for it, not the insurance company. So, of course, the insurance company, being a business, is going to want to save as much money to make as much money as possible. So I get it. Not that we like it, but I understand it. But we have to remember who it really lands on. Who's the responsibility really land on?
The challenge is there's enough profit in this industry for the insurance company to not only make good profits for their shareholders, doing the right thing, but have to take advantage of clients. There's just a lot of, State Farm does, I think, 36,000 claims a day. And so they ultimately, the thought process as well, if you can save $500 a claim, that's $18 million a day in savings.
Right.
You can multiply that through the rental process and the parts process and every single aspect. I think ultimately, if you really want to dig deep into the collision repair business, there's a book called From Good Hands to Boxing Gloves that you really have to read. That communicates what went wrong in our industry. And that was when the insurance industry invited in a company called the McKinsey Group that are consultants that ultimately changed the claims process and was unbelievably financially beneficial for insurance companies. And that's ultimately why all insurance companies, or almost all insurance companies, had to move that direction. They ultimately worried a lot less about the attrition rate and focused more on saving money and customers. That's why State Farm last year spent $1 billion in marketing. But as a marketer, $1 billion can go really far, like quarterbacks and a lot of and ultimately, when you look at companies like Chubb or Amica or Acuity, Erie, Pure Insurance, these insurance, or even Farm Bureau, these insurance companies don't ask us to cut corners, and yet their profits are still good. They might not be record-breaking good like State Farm or Allstate or Geico, but they also retain their customers. When I have a Chubb customer come in, they leave a Chubb customer.
Right.
They have an Allstate claim come in, 9 times out of 10, on their way out, they're asking, "Hey, what insurance company would you suggest change to?" And ultimately, the insurance company is prepared for that. They've already pre-baked into their product. And they're okay with that.
Right. It's wild. It's totally wild. That's interesting. I've never heard of that book before in all my years, Clay. Never heard of it.
Well, I read it on the way to Ohio to a speaking event at OEC. And I'm telling you, by the time I landed, I was like, this makes so much sense. I thought that there was just a bunch of bad batches of people. And I was like, man, I just have bad luck. After reading them, like, oh, this is a process. This is a game. This whole thing created this way. This isn't a mistake. And from there, I remember, like, I still to this day get customers that are like, man, I just wish that the insurance had their shit together. And I said, they do. You don't become a multi-billion-dollar company by not shit together. This is all on purpose. All the mistakes, all the oops, I didn't get the email, or I couldn't open the pictures. Like, it's all financially beneficial, and it's all outlined in the McKinsey files and how they created this process that was hugely beneficial. I think Allstate was the first company to actually hire him on. And I could be wrong here, but if I remember the book saying that Allstate CEO retired, I believe, with over $300 million cash from the 9 years of being with Allstate while hiring the McKinsey Group in.
Wow.
Yeah, and listen, I'm a capitalist at heart. I think that I want everyone to make money.
Yeah.
But not at the demise of my customers.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, there's plenty of money to be made, not at the expense of others.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I love all of it, Clay. I don't even know how long we've been talking, but I feel like I could keep going. And one thing I do want to invite all the listeners to is we do a meeting. Clay and I are co-hosts. We have a couple of other co-hosts on the Collision Cocktail Hour meetings. We do those on the third Wednesday of every month. And if you have questions for Clay or any of us really on the panel, you're welcome to join. I'll put the link in the description if you want to kind of ask Clay a few more questions. Clay, would you be open to it if I put like your email in there? Absolutely. They could email you or whatever.
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay. So I'll have Clay's contact information, and Clay, you're always so fun to talk to. You're such a fun dude. And I love the fact that you're doing differently and you want to share with others that they also can do differently. Like, that's what I get from you. And I really love that.
Yeah. Ultimately, anybody that finds themselves in a position that I was in, 4 or 5 years ago when I met Barrett, man, one of the things that I love is Barrett actually refers people to talk to me or sends people to our shop, because there's a lot of hesitation. There's a lot of, again, there's, you don't know what you don't know. And so there's some people that are like, I want to see it with my own 2 eyes first.
Because it almost sounds too good to be true, really. And like you said, it's not a magic switch.
No. So we have a decent amount of people that come in and just hang out at the shop. In fact, I think we had one guy that hung out for 2 weeks. Just wanted to hang out, got a hotel, and I loved it. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They followed. They shadowed me when I walked out to the customer, or when a collision advisor. They went out and talked to the body guys, and they really, what the common denominator I see with most people that come down to the shadow or just to hang out is they really shake this thing up. Like, okay, I want to see if this is real or not. Somebody's going to tell me this is fake. But yeah, they leave going, wow, this is completely different than what we thought.
Yeah. Well, when I was a shop owner, my favorite thing to do was to tour other shops. I'm a naturally curious person, as you well know by now. So I'm a big question asker. And I loved it to see what other shops were doing, why they were doing it. I learned more doing that than almost anything else. I mean, the conferences are great. Joining different groups is wonderful, but actually going into a shop and touring it and getting to know the people and picking their brains. So if you guys have an opportunity, I totally recommend it. It can be a total game changer for your shop.
100%. I'm going to add to that. Go to businesses that are successful outside of the collision repair business. I think that sometimes as body shop owners, we kind of get stuck only touring and only going around other body shop owners.
True.
And it's almost like we regurgitate the same issues over and over and over.
Yeah.
You go find just a traditional business guy that maybe has or girl that has a clothing store or a hair salon or a sandwich shop. and just talk business.
Yeah.
What you'll find out really quickly is when you tell them about what we go through every single day, they'll look at you like you're crazy, and they'll, dude, you shouldn't do that. Weird, like, you let some random person come in and tell you how much to charge. Like, how does that work? Oh, it doesn't. We're going broke. Well no joke. Fine, But our industry, we're like, yeah, I know. They did the same thing to me. Let's drink a beer.
Yeah. The only people that actually even somewhat understand are like doctors' offices, medical. They're the only ones that kind of get it. But look what they do. They just
I'll say, but hey, FYI, I don't want to be going down that road either. I mean,
no.
mess. The medical industry is a mess, and guess what made it a mess?
Insurance.
No, the providers. It's the same. It's the same thing. The insurance company is the tempter, but the providers are the ones that take the bait. Who are you really going to blame? Fish or the lure?
Right. Yeah.
The providers were the ones that took the bite and then just keep going. Keep going back. Like you'd think at a certain point you'd go, well, let's not do that again.
You'd think. Well, and I think that's where our industry is. Barrett called it the awakening. That like, and I think that's so fitting that we are now having an awakening that we don't have to do this. Why do we keep going back and getting our hand bit? For what? What the heck are we doing here? Who's really benefiting? Because we aren't, customers not. What's happening?
Yeah. So, most people, when they get to that position, they find out the amount of work that it takes to avoid that.
Yeah.
And they go right back to the insurance company. I will tell you, there's a huge benefit for letting the insurance company make decisions for you. And that is, you don't have to think.
Yeah.
You'll always have someone else or something else to blame.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, just like you and I were talking earlier about, I don't like to blame other things. I don't like to be a victim.
Mm-hmm.
I like to find solutions and fix it. Well, that's not everyone. And a lot of people want to, bitch and moan about the industry. But when push comes to shove, they're like, well, I can just blame this person for the lack of my success and still get away with being lazy.
Yeah. Well, and it's the comfort. It's the comfort of what you know rather than the discomfort of what you don't know. But as we know, if you're a fan of some of those guys you've talked about, Ed Milet, all those guys, the growth comes in the discomfort. We don't actually achieve anything until we step out of what we know.
Oh man, you have no idea how many body shop owners, when I tell them that they have to learn how to talk to a customer, they're like, screw that. I'd rather be broke. Like, what? Are you serious? Like, all you have to do is learn how to do what the insurance companies already do. They're really good at talking. They're really good at building a relationship with your client.
They train on it.
Yeah, they practice. I ask all the time, like, how many times do you guys role play in your shop? And they look at me like I'm crazy, like role play. I'm like, well, yeah, the insurance companies are role playing to do the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, I don't want to do that. I'm like, okay, well then stay broke. I mean, it's up to you, man. Do whatever you want to do.
That's right. You do you, bro.
I had one guy that completely lost it on me because I suggested for him he was coming in at 8 and leaving at 5.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't doing any training on his business period. And I told him, I said, I could be wrong, but I don't think you're going to be able to change and develop what I have in my shop between those times.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to stay a little late and maybe learn some laws and learn some things about your business. And he got so irate and he was like, you're not going to, I go fishing every night and you're not going to take that from me. And my personal life is important. And then he got angry at me. He says, Clay, there are some things that are more important than business and you need to spend more time in your family. I said, hey man, you called me for advice, not the other way around. You keep fishing and being broke and complaining and crying. And I promise you, I won't call you to ask you about how to do that life,
Yeah. Because funny thing, I know Clay is a fisherman and he does fish and he does spend time with his kids and he still runs a kick-ass business.
I do. I'm ultra religious. I'm ultra fanatical when it comes to being great at everything that I put my mind to. So I don't want to be a good father. I want to be a great father. I don't want to be an, husband. I want to be an incredible husband. And I think that the mentality of thinking that you can segment, life into different categories is insane. I think great at every single aspect. That's why I love my kids come to the shop and they spend time with me here. And I have a great amount of people that hold me accountable at all times. Barrett is one of them. Tony Adams that works for Axo is another one. My dad is an incredible influencer. And my wife at any time has the freedom to come to me and say, hey, I think you need to spend more time with the kids, or, hey, I think you need to work more hours. We have that open communication with each other that really allows us to not sacrifice one for the other. All have to be successful at all times.
Right. Yeah, I like that. And that's really being true to yourself. I was listening to a podcast, I think it might have been with Ed Milet, about being like this shadow self where we're acting as if, we act as if we're so wonderful and we're so great. And then we go home to our families and we're like, on a scale of 10, we're like a 2, but at school, we're like, or at work, we're the 10. Look at me. We're go. And it's like, you got to be who you are and be the best version of you are, no matter where you are.
Oh, yeah. My favorite is whenever I have these guys that call me that talk about how family life is so important to them. And when they explain what family time is, it's going home, cracking open a beer and turning on a football game. I'm like, hey, I hate to break it to you. That's not family time. I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm saying that maybe I enjoy that as well, but I'm definitely not going to blame the lack of my success in my business because I want to go home and drink a beer and then try to blame it on the family. I'll be honest. I love fishing. You guys, you've seen on Facebook, I've started to pick that up. But what people don't know is the last, I think it was 3 weeks, I didn't fish at all because we lost some people at the shop. And guess what? That's my responsibility. And I know prioritize my life in areas. And listen, there are times in my life where I might not see my daughters for 3 days in a row. But on that Saturday, I might go and have an insane day of going to the zoo and then the mall and buying clothes and a campfire to cook out that night. I make sure that that ultimately, if we're going to live in extremes, they're going to be extremes on both sides.
Yeah. That's cool. I like that. Well, we're going to wrap it up for today, Clay. Thank you so much for coming on and chit-chatting.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was excited when you agreed to come on. I was like, sweet, this is going to be a good conversation today.
Fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah. So Clay's information is in the description. The link to join the Collision Cocktail Hour, if you guys are interested, in the description. And if you like the podcast, make sure you subscribe to it. You can subscribe on YouTube. If you're on Apple Podcasts, just click the plus button, I think it is, or the check mark, whatever, so that you're notified when a new one drops. But I appreciate y'all for coming on and listening to us. And we will see you next time. Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We have some incredible topics and guests coming your way you will not want to miss. If you are watching on YouTube and don't want to miss the latest and greatest, you'll want to hit the bell after subscribing, so you will get a pop-up each time a video podcast goes live. To our devoted fans, would you mind paying it forward and sharing this little gem with someone else you think may benefit from it? Much love from all of us here at Body Bangin', all things auto body.